I never expected to have to homeschool my oldest daughter. I believed in the public education system, and every time we faced difficulties, I kept hoping that the next year, the next teacher, the next transition, things would be different. But now we are in high school, and I have realized that this has to be the last time that we pull her out. This is the third time since we have started school that we have had to remove her from the district due to ongoing issues with support accommodations and the overall educational environment. After years of fighting for what she needed just to access her education fairly, the trust between my daughter and the school system has been deeply damaged. The decision was not made lightly. It came after years of advocacy and frustration, exhaustion, and watching my child slowly lose the confidence in people who were supposed to be helping her succeed. Homeschool was never the original plan, but protecting her well-being and rebuilding her confidence is now what we're focused on. Middle school was probably the worst period for her. Not only was she dealing with the normal social pressures and dramas that come with middle school, but this was also the point where her experience with teachers and staff became incredibly negative. In sixth grade, she had two teachers who were consistently dismissive and unkind to her all the time. In front of the principal, in front of people, just all the time negative towards her, extremely rude. No matter how many meetings I had, no matter how many concerns were raised, the behavior never changed. And then came one of the biggest failures of the entire process. The school somehow deleted her entire 504 plan from the system. Not just her previous plan, but also the updated plan that we had worked out and put in place right before 8th grade started. Because of what was described to us as a system mistake, Kennedy spent more than half of the year without the accommodations that she was legally supposed to have access to. Now imagine being a child already struggling with anxiety and trying to navigate school with confidence issues, no trust in your teachers, and then finding out that the supports that you were supposed to have in place simply weren't there. That period changed everything for her. After that, school was no longer a safe or supportive environment. It became a place where she felt overlooked, misunderstood, and constantly forced to fight for basic support that she should already have, that should already be in place, that these teachers should already be following. We made it a little more than halfway through her 9th grade year at Apponequet before I finally had to face the reality of what was happening. I kept hoping things would improve in high school. I hoped a fresh start, new teachers, a new environment would all help rebuild some of that confidence and trust that had already been damaged over the years. But instead, I watched my daughter continue to struggle emotionally every single day, just trying to walk into a traditional school setting. And as her parent, there came a point where I had to stop asking, how am I going to make this work? And start asking, is this environment actually harming my child? That was the point that I had reached. I realized that forcing her to continue in a setting where she felt unsupported and anxious and emotionally exhausted and constantly on edge was slowly destroying her confidence, her mental well-being, and her relationship with education in general. The realization was devastating for me because homeschool was never part of the plan, but I also knew I couldn't continue ignoring what was right in front of me just because traditional school is considered the normal path. At some point, protecting your child has to become more important than protecting the system. One of the first things I realized after making the decision to homeschool was how confusing the process can seem at first, especially in Massachusetts. A lot of parents think that homeschooling is either impossible, heavily restricted, or that you can just pull your child out overnight. But the reality is it's somewhere there in the middle. Massachusetts is considered a state where homeschool programs do need approval from the local school district, but parents still have a legal right to homeschool their children. You're required to submit what's called a home education plan to the district. This is basically just a written outline explaining how you plan to educate your child. The education plan usually includes the subjects that you'll teach, the curriculum materials and the plan that you'll use, your schedule and instructional materials, and how progress will be evaluated. For us, that was kind of like a mix of all of the curriculum programs, supplemental materials, portfolios, and progress tracking. We use Google Classroom as well to make it easier for her to navigate what we have to do every day. A part that usually scares parents the most is approval. Districts review and approve homeschool plans, but they can't require parents to recreate the public school setting at home. They also can't demand things that go beyond the Massachusetts law. For example, schools usually will request the subjects being taught, the instructional schedule, the curriculum overview, the method of evaluation, but they typically cannot force one specific curriculum, require certified teachers inside the home, demand excessive monitoring, control daily teaching methods, or deny homeschool simply because they disagree with your education style. Another thing that parents worry about is the testing. In Massachusetts, districts can ask for some sort of annual progress evaluation, but that doesn't always mean that it's like a standardized test. Many homeschool families use portfolios like we do, work samples, and written progress reports or assessments that show the educational progress. Once I started researching the actual process of homeschooling, I realized it was a lot more accessible than I had originally thought. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork. It was actually emotionally accepting that I had to take my daughter out of a system that I had spent years trying to make work for her. If you're listening to me because you're considering homeschooling, my biggest advice for you is to do your research, understand your rights, stay organized, and don't let fear stop you from genuinely exploring something that will help your child. Throughout this episode, I'm going to try and guide you in the right direction by sharing some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way, along with some resources and programs that I think will help make this process for you a little less overwhelming. One of the biggest things that people think is that you have to create the perfect classroom environment, and you don't. You also don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a curriculum either. There are many free and affordable resources that are available now to make homeschooling much more realistic for the average family. Some families use a full online curriculum. Others mix free resources like Khan Academy with subscriptions like Time for Learning or IXL. Some parents create completely customized learning plans based on how their child learns best. That flexibility is one of the biggest benefits in homeschooling. For the first time, education can actually be adjusted to fit the child instead of forcing the child to fit the system. I'm still learning too, and I definitely don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm sharing our experience because if me sharing this helps one more family, one more child, then it makes all of this effort worth it. One of the things that really helped calm my anxiety during this process was to see actual examples from other homeschool parents. So I wanted to walk you through what I personally included in our homeschool plan for Kennedy. Your plan doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to show that your child will be receiving an education that is organized and consistent and appropriate for their learning needs. For subjects, I kept things pretty straightforward and aligned with the standard educational requirements. Our core subjects included English, math, science, history, and social studies. But I also added additional subjects that match Kennedy's interest in real life skills, including personal finance, creative writing, and French. This is one of the things I love about homeschooling is the flexibility to include things that actually matter to your child for their future, not just the standardized testing. Kennedy was failing Spanish in high school because she studies French. She speaks French really well, but she was receiving an F in Spanish because French wasn't offered to her. So that's just one of the things that really didn't work for us there. For our schedule, I explained that instruction would happen 5 days a week for about 4 hours per day. I want parents to hear this very clearly when I say this. Homeschooling does not need to look like sitting at a desk for 7 straight hours. It's mostly really unrealistic for people who are exploring the homeschool option. A lot of homeschool education is more efficient because you're working one-on-one, there are fewer distractions, and you can move at your child's pace instead of waiting for the entire classroom. I also included that we plan to continue instruction through the summer months to help fill some of the educational gaps that will allow Kennedy time to rebuild her confidence in learning without the pressure. For curriculum, we use a mix of Time for Learning, IXL, Study Pug, and OutSchool. This is another thing I want parents to really understand is you do not have to commit to one single curriculum forever. You can mix and match, and if something isn't working, you can just adjust it. That type of flexibility can be really life-changing for kids who struggle with traditional school settings. For the evaluation parts, we kept it really simple. I'll be keeping track of the progress through portfolios, work samples, quizzes and assessment, progress reports, and the saved assignments. We use Google Classroom. It's a very helpful tool so she can stay on track with what she has to do. I'm also keeping organized records of the completed work, which honestly helps me feel more confident because I can see when she's ready to progress more or where she actually needs some more help. I know that sometimes in the middle school it's really hard to see where our students are actually struggling because we don't really get much work home to really recognize those patterns. At first, the process felt like really intimidating, but once I sat down and actually started building a plan, I realized that homeschool doesn't have to be recreating a public school. It creates an education that finally is working for her. Another thing that I've started doing is incorporating Kennedy's actual interest into her learning, which is something that a traditional school doesn't have the flexibility to do for her. She loves cosmetology, so I've been adding in educational YouTube videos and learning content related to cosmetology, the hair, beauty, science, skincare, and techniques used within that industry. I think that it's something that really important for parents to understand, and that learning doesn't always come from a textbook. Learning can be hands-on experiences and all kinds of other stuff. When a kid is interested in something, they engage differently. They pay attention more, they retain the information better, and they become excited to learn instead of being forced. So while she's learning about cosmetology, she's also building skills in listening and comprehension, note-taking, communication, creativity, business concepts, science related to skincare and hair, and even potential future career interest. Keeping education connected to your child's interests can completely change how they feel about learning. For the first time in a very long time, I'm seeing Kennedy engage in education without the constant stress and emotional exhaustion attached to it. One of the biggest questions that parents ask when they start looking into homeschool is, what curriculum should I use? And honestly, that answer is really going to depend completely on your child's personality, learning style, attention span, and what level of flexibility your family really has. So I wanted to break down some of the most popular programs that I've looked into and explain what kind of student each one may work best for. The first one that we're going to tackle is Time for Learning. That's probably one of the most commonly used homeschool programs, especially for families transitioning out of public school. It's structured, it's easy to navigate, and it covers most of the core subjects in one place. For this program, it would work really well with parents who want structure, kids who do better with routine, visual learners, and independent learners. One thing is that automatically it tracks the grades and the progress, which can take record keeping out of the equation with your homeschool and make it much easier for parents. The downside is that some kids can experience screen fatigue because it is heavily based just online. One of the programs that I really like is called OutSchool, and it's completely different than a regular traditional program. Instead of one full curriculum, it offers live online classes taught by real instructors on almost every single topic that you can imagine. Academics, art, gaming, creative writing, coding, cosmetology, life skills, and so much more. The pricing on that one varies on the class. Some are only a few dollars, while others are more expensive in their multi-week courses. This program works great for kids who miss social interactions, students with specific interests, creative learners, and kids who struggle with the traditional learning strategies. This is one of the coolest options because it actually allows kids to learn with things that they really enjoy. Khan Academy is one of the best free educational options available right now. I really want parents to hear that. It's free. Yay, free. It offers lessons in math, science, history, SAT prep, economics, and more. This works especially well for supplementing homeschool curriculum, independent learners, families on a budget, students who need extra help in specific subjects. The downside is that it's not really a full homeschool program by itself. It works best to combine this with other resources. I attach links to their videos from their YouTube channel that correlate with what Kennedy's learning in case she needs a little extra assistance with that lesson. The last one that I'm going to talk about today is StudyPug. This is something that I've really liked as a supplemental learning tool, especially for math and creative writing. It uses short video lessons, practice problems, quizzes, and step-by-step explanations to help students really understand the concepts in a less overwhelming way. Plans for this usually start around $10 per month, depending on the subscription and how many subjects you choose. It really works well for students struggling with math, students who need concepts broken down visually, independent learners, school families needing extra support in difficult subjects, and students who feel behind academically. One thing that I like about StudyPug is that it feels less intimidating than a traditional tutor. Students can replay the lessons, pause the videos, and move at their own pace without feeling embarrassed or pressured. It also has progress tracking, quizzes, and curriculum aligned lessons, which makes it helpful for homeschool curriculum and skill building. Okay, that was a lot of information, so deep breath. Okay. One thing that I really want you guys to think about if you are considering homeschooling is the emotional side of transitioning into it. We all focus on the curriculum, the paperwork, the schedules, and like the legal requirements, but honestly, the emotional transition has a really big impact too. As a parent, there's a huge fear of failure attached. You start asking yourself, what if I mess this up? What if I can't teach her well enough? What if homeschooling makes things worse? What if she falls behind? What if people judge us? And when you spend years being told that traditional school is the only correct path for a child, stepping away from that system feels terrifying at first. I was worried about a lot of the socialization because that's one of the first things that people seem to mention when you bring up homeschooling. Honestly, I had to stop and ask myself something really important, and you should ask yourself this. Was Kennedy actually thriving socially in the school environment that we were fighting so hard to keep her in? Because there's a huge difference between being surrounded by people all day and actually feeling emotional, safe, connected, and supported and included. What I'm realizing now is that socialization can happen in much healthier ways. Community activities, sports, homeschool groups, creative programs, volunteering, part-time jobs later in the future, and our personal favorite is traveling. The truth is that when a child is emotionally exhausted every single day and they're just trying to survive at school, they usually don't even have the energy left to enjoy the social interactions anyways. Another thing that I had to learn, and I think is a huge thing for parents, is that you don't need to recreate the public school setting inside your home. I know I've already said that, but I'm just going to say it again. You do not need to recreate a public school at home. A lot of us leave traditional school systems only to actually bring the same pressures and structure and stress and burnout right back into our homes. And you don't have to do that. Homeschooling really does give families the opportunity to do things differently. Right now, one of my biggest priorities for Kennedy is simply allowing her to decompress. I think parents need to understand that kids coming out of a difficult school setting and bad experiences often need time to emotionally recover before they can fully reconnect with learning again. For years, Kennedy associated education with stress, conflict, embarrassment, feeling unsupported, falling behind, and feeling misunderstood. That doesn't disappear overnight just because we change the setting. So instead of immediately trying to focus on a strict 7-hour school day at home, I'm focusing on rebuilding her confidence first. I want her to enjoy learning again. I want her to feel capable again, and I want her to feel heard again. Honestly, for the first time in years, I've already started seeing little pieces of that come back. The pressure in our house even feels different now. There's less panic, there's less emotional exhaustion, there's less fighting to get through the school day. And while I know homeschooling won't magically solve every single problem overnight, I do believe that giving a learning environment where she feels safe and supported and understood is a much healthier place to start rebuilding from. If you're a parent considering homeschooling and you're still here with me, I want you to know this. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to let your child breathe, and it's okay to admit that every traditional path may not be right for your child. If public school isn't working for your child, pull them out. You have options. So now I want to get into the actual process that we followed within the Freetown Lakeville Regional School District, because I know that this is the part that confuses parents and they get really nervous about this. The very first step that you want to do is just writing and submitting a formal homeschool letter and an education plan to the district. This is the part that intimidated me the most at first because I thought that it had to be like this huge, complicated legal document. But once I started researching more Massachusetts homeschool law practices, I realized that the goal is to just really provide the district with a reasonable outline. It should show what the child will be learning, how the instruction will happen, and how the progress will be evaluated. In my letter, I included the basic student information, parent instructor information, our subjects, curriculum resources, schedule, and our evaluation methods. I also chose to explain why we were making the decision to homeschool because in our situation, the history behind the decision really mattered. I explained the repeated failures involving Kennedy's 504 accommodations, the emotional impact the school had begun having on her, and why I no longer believe that the traditional environment was supporting her educational needs appropriately. That goes from disrespect from teachers to all the way not understanding anything about her. Most of her teachers didn't even take the time to try and understand. They just belittled her and made her feel bad. You don't necessarily have to share your entire personal story with the district if you don't want to. Some parents keep their letters extremely simple and only submit the required information, and others choose to explain the reasoning more deeply. That choice is completely up to you. For me personally, after years of meetings and advocacy and emails and trying to make things work within the system, I felt it was really important to document how we had reached this point. After submitting the letter, the district reviews the homeschool plan, and I think this is another area where parents become unnecessarily scared. A homeschool review is not supposed to be an interrogation. The district can request reasonable educational information, but they can't completely control your school environment or force you to recreate the public school exactly the same way at home. I highly recommend keeping records of everything: your homeschool letters, your emails, evaluations, curriculum information, progress reports, and communication within the district. I use a 3-ring binder for a lot of this stuff, and in my email, I have a separate folder where everything from the school goes. Organization really becomes your best friend during this whole entire process. I want parents to know that it's okay if your homeschool plan isn't working. You can definitely change it. One of the biggest benefits of homeschooling is the flexibility that comes along with that. Just make sure you keep the district updated on what resources you're using for your child. If your child suddenly becomes passionate about something, you can build their learning skills around that interest. That flexibility is something that many kids never get in a traditional school system. So it's really actually helpful especially for neurodivergent children. Once the initial fear started wearing off, I realized that the process itself was much more manageable than I originally imagined, and the emotional decision was really harder than the paperwork. All right, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up everything for today. I know that it was a lot of information. Feel free to pause the video, rewatch it, or even reach out to me if you still need any help. I'm always here to answer any questions that you have about the homeschooling, the curriculum, or even the process itself. One of the biggest things I can say is just remember that it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're choosing to homeschool, you're already taking your child out of a really bad environment, so you don't need to bring them back into your home and cause the same stress. Take it easy, take it step by step, and do what works for you and what works for your child.